Hello, and welcome to Boring Science to Sleep, a quiet place where science becomes slow, soft, and easy to drift through. Tonight, we're going to gently explore the quiet nervous system, not to learn everything about it, but simply to notice it, slowly, calmly, one gentle thought at a time. If you enjoy these peaceful journeys through the hidden wonders of science, you're always welcome to like this video and subscribe, but only if it feels right for you. And if you'd like, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It is always a quiet joy to imagine so many different nights, in so many different places, gently coming together beneath the same curiosity. Now, dim the lights if you can. Perhaps there is a fan humming softly nearby, or rain resting against a window, or simply the quiet rhythm of the room around you. Allow your shoulders to loosen, your breathing to become unhurried, and your thoughts to wander without needing to arrive anywhere. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to accomplish. For the next little while, you are safe. You are simply here to listen, to drift, and to quietly discover a remarkable world that has been inside you since the very beginning. Without asking for your attention, it has been working every second of your life, and tonight, we will simply notice it together. Long before you opened your eyes this morning, long before your first thought appeared, and long before you decided to move even a single finger, something inside you was already quietly awake. It asked for no praise. It expected no thanks. It simply continued its endless conversation. That conversation is your nervous system. You cannot see it as you look around the room. You cannot hear it humming beneath your skin. You cannot feel the countless tiny messages quietly flowing through it every moment. And yet, almost everything you experience depends upon it. Every heartbeat, every breath, every memory that gently returns, every familiar face, every sound that reaches your ears, every warm cup held between your hands, even the simple feeling of being here, right now, listening to these words, is only possible because billions of tiny living cells are quietly speaking to one another. Imagine, for just a moment, a peaceful city in the middle of the night. The streets are calm. Most windows are dark. Nothing dramatic seems to be happening. Yet beneath that quiet surface, lights still glow in distant buildings. Trains continue moving through hidden tunnels. Tiny deliveries arrive exactly where they are needed. Traffic lights quietly guide empty roads. Power stations continue supplying energy to homes where everyone sleeps. The city never truly stops. Your nervous system is much like that quiet city. Even while you sleep, it continues its careful work. It watches over your breathing without asking you to think about each breath. It gently adjusts your heartbeat from one moment to the next. It notices the temperature around you. It keeps your balance if you roll onto your side. It quietly listens to thousands of tiny changes happening throughout your body. Most of these conversations happen without ever reaching your awareness. In fact, perhaps the most remarkable thing about the nervous system is not how much it does. It is how quietly it does it. You rarely notice your brain deciding how firmly to grip a cup. You rarely notice your eyes making countless tiny movements every minute. You rarely notice your muscles receiving precise instructions that allow you to smile, blink, swallow, or simply remain comfortably seated. The quieter something becomes, the easier it is to overlook. And few things are quieter than the invisible network that gently keeps you alive. Scientists often describe the nervous system as the body's communication network. That description is wonderfully accurate, but perhaps tonight we can imagine it a little differently. Instead of telephone wires or computer cables, Imagine countless soft rivers flowing through a peaceful landscape. Each river carries tiny messages. Some travel from your fingertips toward your brain. Others flow from your brain toward your muscles. Still others quietly circle within the brain itself, weaving together memories, emotions, imagination, and dreams. These rivers never truly stop flowing. Some move quickly. Some move slowly. Some carry information about the outside world. Others carry news from deep within your own body. Together, they create something extraordinary. They create your experience of being you. To understand this hidden world, it helps to imagine that it has two gentle neighborhoods working together. One is safely protected inside your skull and along your spine. This is often called the central nervous system. It is where countless conversations are gathered, compared, and gently woven into decisions. The other stretches outward, like countless quiet pathways, reaching every corner of your body. This is the peripheral nervous system. It connects your brain and spinal cord to your skin, your muscles, your organs, and almost everywhere else that life quietly unfolds. Neither works alone. Every tiny sensation, every graceful movement, every emotion, every memory depends upon their endless cooperation. They are less like two separate places and more like two halves of the same gentle conversation. And what an astonishing conversation it is. Even now, as you continue listening, countless tiny signals are traveling beneath your awareness. Some are helping your eyes follow these words. Others are adjusting the muscles of your face. Some are quietly measuring the position of your hands without requiring you to look at them. Others are gently reminding your lungs to rise and fall in their familiar rhythm. All of this happens so naturally that it feels effortless. Perhaps that is why we so rarely stop to appreciate it. The nervous system does not ask to be noticed. It simply continues, patiently, faithfully, quietly. Over the course of this journey, we will slowly meet the remarkable cells that carry these conversations. We will follow tiny signals as they ripple through invisible pathways. We will discover how gentle patterns become memories, how silent networks become emotions, how ordinary sensations become the rich world you experience every day. We will quietly explore how the brain changes throughout life, how it heals, how it dreams, and how it continues adapting in ways that scientists are still discovering. There is no need to hurry. There is no final test waiting for you. The purpose is not to memorize. It is simply to notice. Like watching distant stars appear one by one across a peaceful evening sky, and somewhere beneath every thought, every feeling, and every dream, an almost unimaginable number of tiny conversations continue their quiet work, asking for nothing in return except the chance to keep gently unfolding, one small whisper at a time. A quiet conversation that slowly grows richer across hundreds of millions of years. When you quietly look around the world today, it can seem as though nervous systems have always existed. Every bird flying across the sky, every cat stretching beneath a warm window, every whale gliding through the deep ocean, and every person peacefully resting beneath a blanket carries within them an invisible network of astonishing complexity. It feels so familiar that it is easy to imagine life has always been this way. But the story begins somewhere much quieter, long before there were forests, long before birds filled the morning air with songs, long before eyes opened to greet the sunrise. Life was astonishingly simple. Imagine an ancient ocean unlike any you would recognize today. There were no fish swimming through blue water, no coral reefs, no shells resting upon sandy shores. only tiny living cells drifting slowly through warm seas beneath a young sky. These early forms of life had no brains, no thoughts, no memories, no dreams, and certainly no nervous systems. Yet even these tiny travelers faced a quiet challenge every single moment. The world around them was always changing. Light appeared and disappeared. Water became warmer or cooler. Food drifted nearby before slowly floating away again. Sometimes the environment was welcoming. Sometimes it was not. Even the simplest living cell had to notice these changes if it wished to continue existing. In a gentle way, you might think of these first cells as quiet listeners. They could not understand the world. They could not imagine it. But they could notice. A little warmth, a little light, a tiny chemical drifting through the water. That ability to notice was one of life's earliest gifts. Over immense stretches of time, countless generations passed. Not years, not centuries, but hundreds of millions of years. Slowly, almost too slowly to imagine, some groups of cells began working together. Instead of each tiny cell responding entirely on its own, neighboring cells started sharing simple information. One cell might quietly signal another. Something has changed. Something has touched us. Something nearby may be food. The conversations were incredibly simple. Nothing like language. Nothing like thought. Just gentle exchanges that allowed many cells to respond together instead of separately. Looking back today, scientists see these quiet conversations as one of the earliest steps toward the nervous system. No one planned it. No single moment transformed life forever. There was no grand invention, only countless tiny improvements, patiently collected across unimaginable lengths of time. As these conversations became richer, they also became faster. Certain cells slowly specialized. Some became especially good at noticing changes in the environment. Others became especially good at passing along information. Still others became better at creating movement. Instead of every cell doing every job, life quietly discovered the beauty of cooperation. It is a pattern you will notice again and again throughout this journey. Nature often creates remarkable complexity, not by making one thing extraordinary, but by allowing many simple things to work together. Eventually, another beautiful step appeared. Some early animals no longer relied only on scattered conversations between neighboring cells. Instead, the communication network itself began forming gentle patterns. One of the oldest examples still living today can be found in creatures such as jellyfish. Unlike you, a jellyfish has no brain directing every movement. Instead, it possesses a wide network of communicating cells spread throughout its body. Imagine a fishing net floating peacefully beneath the sea. Now imagine that every knot in that net can quietly pass a message to the next. Touch one part, and the message gently spreads across the entire web. There is no central commander, no single control room, only countless local conversations flowing outward like ripples across calm water. It may seem wonderfully simple, yet for hundreds of millions of years, this gentle design allowed countless creatures to survive. Little by little, life continued experimenting. As animals became more active, they benefited from gathering information in one place. Instead of messages wandering freely across the entire body, more signals began meeting together. Gradually, tiny clusters of communicating cells formed. Those clusters became early control centers, not the human brain as we know it, only the faintest beginning. You might imagine travelers from many different roads arriving at a small village. At first, only a few paths crossed there. Then more arrived. Soon the village became a town. Much later, a city. The evolution of the brain followed a surprisingly similar rhythm, not through sudden leaps, but through gentle gathering. As millions of years quietly passed, those small control centers slowly became more organized. Animals learned to move with greater precision. They could respond more quickly to danger. They could remember familiar places. They could explore increasingly complicated environments. Every improvement opened the door to another. Every quiet success became the foundation for something even richer. Eventually, long after oceans had filled with life and forests covered the land, mammals appeared. Among them were distant ancestors whose nervous systems became increasingly skilled at learning, rather than relying only on instinct. Instead of responding to every situation in exactly the same way, they could adapt. Experience itself became valuable. Every encounter gently shaped future behavior. In many ways, this quiet ability to change would become one of the greatest strengths of the nervous system. It did not simply receive information, it learned from it. It remembered, it adjusted. It became a living history of every experience. And after countless generations, that long story eventually reached us. The nervous system inside your own body is not something entirely separate from those ancient oceans. It is part of the same continuous story. Every neuron within your brain carries the legacy of an unbroken chain of life, stretching back farther than imagination can comfortably reach. Every gentle sensation you experience today is connected, however distantly, to those first tiny living cells, quietly learning to notice their surroundings. There is something deeply comforting about that thought. The remarkable network inside you did not appear overnight. It was shaped patiently, carefully, one small improvement after another, like a river slowly finding its path through a landscape, like roots quietly spreading beneath an ancient forest, like stars appearing so gradually across the evening sky that you hardly notice the darkness changing. And perhaps that is the most beautiful lesson hidden inside this long story. The nervous system did not become extraordinary by rushing. It became extraordinary through patience, through countless quiet moments of listening, through endless gentle conversations that slowly grew richer with time. As you continue resting here, breathing softly, that same ancient conversation is still unfolding inside you, not as something old and distant, but as something wonderfully alive. Every heartbeat, every breath, every peaceful thought, each one, is another small chapter in a story that began in quiet oceans long before anyone was there to witness it. And somewhere within that endless conversation, among billions of tiny living cells quietly working together, it is finally time to meet one of the smallest participants, a single remarkable cell whose gentle whispers help make every thought, every movement, and every memory possible. A quiet tree in an endless forest, gently listening, remembering, and passing whispers from one branch to another. As the ancient conversation of life continued across countless generations, something remarkable slowly appeared. Not a giant leap, not a sudden invention, just one extraordinary kind of living cell. It is so small that thousands of them could rest comfortably on the tip of your finger, and yet together they create every memory you have ever kept, every melody you have ever recognized, every smile you have ever shared, every dream you have ever wandered through. These remarkable cells are called neurons. Tonight, though, you do not need to remember their name. You can simply imagine them as quiet storytellers. Imagine yourself walking through a peaceful forest just before sunrise. The air is still. Nothing seems hurried. Tall trees stand silently all around you. At first glance, each tree appears separate from the others. But beneath the soft earth, their roots quietly reach outward. Above the ground, their branches stretch gently into the open air. Although each tree stands alone, together they create the entire forest. A neuron is very much like one of those quiet trees. On its own, it is fascinating. Together with billions of others, it becomes something almost impossible to fully imagine. Each neuron is a living cell. Like every other cell inside your body, it breathes, grows, repairs itself, and quietly carries out countless tiny tasks every moment. But unlike many other cells, a neuron has a very special purpose. Its purpose is not to build muscle. It does not carry oxygen through your blood. It does not protect your skin. Its entire life is devoted to one gentle responsibility: listening, deciding, and passing messages onward. If you could somehow shrink until you were no larger than one of these tiny cells, you might notice that it has an elegant shape. Near its center rests the main body of the cell. You can think of it as a quiet little home. Inside this home, countless small processes continue day and night, keeping the cell healthy and ready for another conversation. Extending outward from that center are many short, delicate branches. These branches quietly reach toward neighboring neurons. Scientists call them dendrites. For tonight, you may simply imagine them as listening branches. Their purpose is wonderfully gentle. They receive whispers arriving from nearby cells. Thousands of tiny messages may arrive throughout every passing second. Most are small. Many fade away almost immediately. Some become important. The neuron patiently listens to them all. If the listening branches are like the branches of a tree, another part stretches much farther. From the center of the neuron extends one long, graceful pathway. Scientists call this the axon. Tonight, perhaps it is easier to imagine it as a quiet woodland path winding toward another distant tree. Its purpose is simple. When the neuron decides that a message should continue, this long pathway gently carries it onward. It is rather beautiful to imagine. Listening branches quietly gather countless whispers. The little home considers them together. Then, if the moment is right, a single message begins its journey along the long pathway toward another waiting cell. This pattern repeats again, and again, and again, every second of your life. One neuron listening, another responding, another passing the conversation onward. Although each neuron follows this same peaceful rhythm, they do not all perform identical work. Some spend their entire lives listening to the outside world. Imagine placing your fingertips against a warm cup of tea. Long before you consciously recognize its comforting warmth, tiny sensory neurons have already noticed the change. They quietly begin sending messages inward. Other sensory neurons notice gentle pressure beneath your feet as you stand. Some notice light entering your eyes. Others detect the vibrations of sound reaching your ears. Still others quietly observe the changing chemistry within your own body. Together, they act like countless tiny reporters, each sending small pieces of news toward the brain. Elsewhere, another group of neurons patiently waits. These are often called motor neurons. Rather than carrying information inward, they carry gentle instructions outward. When you decide to lift your hand, smile at a friend, or slowly close your eyes before sleep, these neurons quietly deliver those messages to your muscles. It can feel as though your body simply moves because you wish it to. Yet beneath that simple experience lies an extraordinary chain of tiny conversations happening so smoothly that you almost never notice them. Between these two groups exists an even larger community. These are connecting neurons. You might imagine them as thoughtful neighbors living throughout the forest, quietly passing news from one pathway to another. Most of the neurons inside your brain belong to this group. They compare information. They combine experiences. They help transform simple signals into ideas, memories, emotions, imagination, and understanding. Without them, the world would remain only scattered pieces of information. With them, those countless tiny fragments become the rich experience of everyday life. Perhaps the most surprising thing about neurons is that they almost never work alone. When people imagine the brain, they sometimes picture a few especially important cells making grand decisions. Reality is much quieter. No single neuron contains your memories. No single neuron knows your favorite song. No single neuron recognizes the face of someone you love. Instead, meaning quietly emerges from enormous communities working together. Imagine standing high above a city after sunset. No single light creates the city. Yet together, millions of tiny lights become something beautiful. The nervous system follows a remarkably similar pattern. Each neuron contributes only a small part. Together, they create awareness itself. Even more remarkable is the fact that these relationships are not fixed forever. Every conversation slightly shapes future conversations. Every new experience gently changes which pathways become easier to follow. Every skill you practice strengthens certain connections, while allowing others to grow quieter. The forest is alive. Its branches continue reaching. Its pathways continue changing. Its conversations never truly end. As you sit or lie here now, listening without effort, billions upon billions of neurons are quietly carrying on these gentle exchanges. Some help you understand these words. Others quietly monitor your breathing. Some help you remain balanced against the surface beneath you. Others retrieve distant memories that may drift softly through your thoughts before fading once more into stillness. You do not need to direct them. You do not need to supervise them. They have been practicing this quiet conversation since before you took your very first breath. Perhaps that is why they feel so invisible. Like stars hidden by daylight, their work is always there, even when you cannot see it. And within every one of these patient cells, after all the listening branches have gathered their whispers, and the quiet home has considered them together, there comes a gentle moment when a tiny electrical wave begins its journey, carrying another peaceful message across the endless forest of the nervous system. A quiet ripple traveling across a still lake, carrying a message from one peaceful shore to another. As you continue resting comfortably, imagine returning to the quiet forest we discovered together. Each tree has been listening patiently. Its branches have collected countless tiny whispers from nearby neighbors. Most of those whispers are gentle enough to fade almost as soon as they arrive. Some encourage another conversation. Others suggest waiting a little longer. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels loud. The forest seems almost perfectly still. And yet, beneath that peaceful stillness, something remarkable is always waiting. There comes a quiet moment when one tiny message becomes just important enough to continue its journey. Not because a single whisper is especially powerful. Rather, because many small whispers have slowly gathered together, like gentle raindrops filling a calm pond. Eventually, almost without noticing exactly when it happened, the pond begins to overflow. Something similar happens inside a neuron. For most of its life, a neuron waits peacefully. Scientists often describe this as the cell's resting state. The word resting can sound as though nothing is happening, but that is far from the truth. Even while resting, the neuron is quietly preparing itself. It is carefully maintaining a tiny electrical balance between its inner world and the space surrounding it. You do not need to imagine numbers or measurements. Instead, picture a quiet hillside covered in fresh snow. Everything appears perfectly still. The snow has not begun to slide. Nothing dramatic is taking place, yet hidden within that peaceful landscape is gentle potential. The hillside is ready, patiently waiting for the right moment. A resting neuron is much the same. It quietly holds the possibility of movement without moving at all. As more listening branches receive gentle whispers from neighboring cells, something begins to change. Not suddenly, not explosively, rather like sunlight slowly warming the surface of a frozen lake. Each tiny message contributes only a little. One whisper alone changes very little, but hundreds, then thousands of quiet whispers arriving together, slowly bring the neuron closer to a decision. Eventually, there comes a moment when the cell quietly decides, yes, this message should continue. That decision marks the beginning of one of the most beautiful events in the living world. A tiny electrical wave is born. It is tempting to imagine electricity as bright flashes of lightning or powerful sparks jumping through the air. But inside your nervous system, electricity is much gentler. It is more like a ripple spreading across perfectly calm water. Imagine dropping a single smooth pebble into the center of a silent pond. The ripple does not leap from one side to the other. Instead, each tiny circle gently encourages the next circle to appear. The movement flows naturally. One small change invites another. The wave quietly carries itself forward. That is wonderfully similar to the way a neuron passes along its message. The electrical wave does not race because someone is pushing it. Each tiny part of the pathway gently awakens the next, allowing the message to travel steadily toward its destination. It is less like a speeding train, more like a row of lanterns softly lighting one after another through the evening mist. Light, then another, each one quietly inviting the next to glow. Perhaps one of the most extraordinary things about this tiny electrical wave is that it always travels in a single direction. Once it begins its journey, it does not turn around. It does not become confused. It simply continues forward with remarkable patience. That quiet sense of direction allows billions of neurons to communicate without endless confusion. Every message knows which way to go. Every pathway gently guides the conversation onward. Some of these pathways are surprisingly short. Others stretch much farther than you might imagine. A neuron carrying information from your lower back toward your brain may extend across an astonishing distance for a single living cell. Imagine a quiet country road winding peacefully through fields beneath an open sky. Now imagine that messages can travel along that road with incredible reliability, day after day, year after year. The nervous system quietly accomplishes something very much like that. Of course, some roads are easier to travel than others. Nature discovered a wonderfully elegant solution to help certain messages move more smoothly. Many of the longer pathways are gently wrapped in a protective covering called myelin. Tonight, you might simply imagine it as a soft layer of natural insulation, much like a warm winter coat protecting someone walking through a snowy landscape. The coat does not create the traveler. It does not choose the destination. It simply helps the journey continue comfortably and efficiently. Myelin plays a similar role. Rather than allowing the electrical wave to slowly touch every tiny part of the pathway, it helps guide the message from one small opening to the next. The journey becomes lighter, quieter, more efficient. It almost feels as though the message is skipping gracefully across smooth stepping stones laid over a peaceful stream, not because the signal is rushing, but because the path has been prepared so beautifully. This quiet design allows you to respond with astonishing speed when needed. If your fingertips unexpectedly touch something painfully hot, messages begin their journey almost immediately. If you suddenly lose your balance, countless tiny conversations unfold before you are even fully aware that anything has changed. Your body is not waiting for panic. It is quietly helping you remain safe. Most of the time, however, these electrical waves carry far gentler news. The softness of a blanket, the familiar voice of someone you love, the cool breeze entering through an open window, the comforting rhythm of slow breathing before sleep. Every one of those experiences begins as countless tiny electrical ripples traveling through patient neurons. No wave is especially important by itself. No single message creates your experience. Instead, billions of tiny journeys overlap and weave together like countless little streams joining one peaceful river. Some rivers carry information inward from your senses. Others carry gentle instructions outward to your muscles. Still others remain entirely within the brain itself, quietly helping thoughts become memories, memories become understanding, and understanding become the quiet awareness you carry through each day. Perhaps the most comforting thought is that these electrical waves never ask for applause. They simply continue, day after day, night after night. Even now, while you rest and listen without effort, they travel faithfully through pathways you have never seen, carrying conversations you never consciously hear. Their work is so dependable that it almost disappears beneath ordinary life. And yet every peaceful breath, every blink, every quiet thought depends upon these gentle ripples continuing their endless journey. Eventually, every traveling wave reaches the end of its long pathway. But its journey is not quite finished there. Between one neuron and the next lies an incredibly tiny space, a peaceful meeting place where electricity gently pauses, chemistry quietly takes over, and another remarkable conversation is about to begin. A series of quiet bridges stretching across a peaceful river where every traveler must briefly pause before continuing the journey. The tiny electrical wave has now reached the end of its long pathway. It has traveled patiently through the quiet forest of neurons, moving from one peaceful stretch of living tissue to the next without ever losing its direction. You might imagine a traveler walking along a winding path beneath tall trees. For many miles, the journey feels smooth and uninterrupted, but eventually, the traveler arrives at the edge of a narrow river. The path does not continue directly across. Instead, there is a small gap, a quiet space. Not wide enough to seem impossible, not so narrow that it disappears, simply a gentle pause between one side and the other. Something very similar exists between almost every pair of neurons. Although neurons communicate constantly, they usually do not touch each other directly. Instead, a tiny space separates them. Scientists call this meeting place a synapse. Tonight, you might simply imagine it as a small wooden bridge connecting two peaceful gardens. The bridge is never crowded. No voices are raised. Every message waits its turn before quietly crossing. This tiny pause may seem surprising. If the nervous system depends on continuous communication, why not connect every neuron directly? Perhaps because conversations are often more meaningful when there is a moment to listen before responding. The little space between neurons allows the message to change, to soften, to grow stronger, or sometimes to fade away entirely. It transforms communication from something mechanical into something wonderfully flexible. As the tiny electrical wave reaches the end of its pathway, it can travel no farther on its own. Its journey changes. electricity quietly gives way to chemistry. Imagine standing beside that peaceful bridge at sunset. Instead of shouting across the river, the traveler carefully places a small handwritten letter into the hands of a waiting messenger. That messenger walks gently across the bridge and delivers the note to someone waiting on the opposite side. Only after the letter has been received does the next part of the journey begin. Inside the nervous system, these tiny letters are carried by remarkable molecules, often called neurotransmitters. For tonight, it may feel much gentler simply to think of them as chemical messengers. Each one carries a slightly different kind of invitation. Some quietly encourage the next neuron to continue the conversation. Others suggest slowing down for a moment. Neither is better than the other. Both are necessary. Imagine an orchestra preparing for a peaceful evening performance. Some musicians begin playing. Others pause, allowing moments of silence to shape the music. Without the notes, there would be no melody. Without the silence, there would be no beauty. The nervous system follows a surprisingly similar rhythm. Some chemical messengers gently encourage activity. Others create space for calm. Together, they help the entire network remain beautifully balanced. One of the most common encouraging messengers is called glutamate. You do not need to remember its name. It is enough to imagine it as a gentle invitation that says, "The conversation may continue." Across billions of tiny meeting places, this invitation quietly helps information keep flowing. Balancing that invitation is another messenger with a wonderfully calming role. Its scientific name is long and not especially important for tonight. Many people simply know it by a much shorter name. Rather than remembering either name, you might think of it as one of the brain's natural calming messengers. When it quietly arrives at a meeting place between neurons, it often encourages the conversation to slow down. Not every message needs to continue. Not every whisper needs to become a shout. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply a little more stillness. This balance between movement and rest is one of the reasons your nervous system remains so remarkably stable. If every neuron tried to speak all at once, the result would be overwhelming. If every neuron remained silent forever, nothing could happen at all. Instead, countless tiny decisions gently guide the flow of conversation, creating harmony from unimaginable complexity. Other chemical messengers carry very different kinds of information. One has become especially famous because people often associate it with reward, curiosity, and motivation. Its name is dopamine. You may have heard it described as the brain's reward chemical. That description captures only part of its story. Rather than simply creating happiness, it often helps the brain notice that something important may be worth paying attention to. It quietly whispers, "This experience matters." Another familiar messenger is serotonin. It is often connected with emotional balance and overall well-being. Like many things inside the nervous system, its role is far richer than a single definition. Instead of controlling one emotion, it quietly participates in many different conversations throughout the brain and body, helping maintain a gentle sense of stability across countless networks. Another messenger plays an especially important role whenever your muscles receive instructions to move. Its scientific name is acetylcholine. You do not need to remember that name tonight. Instead, imagine it as the messenger that quietly delivers the invitation for muscles to awaken and gently contract. Without it, even the simplest movements would become extraordinarily difficult. What makes these tiny messengers truly remarkable is that they never work alone. At every peaceful meeting place between neurons, countless influences quietly overlap. One messenger arrives, another follows. Some strengthen the conversation, others soften it, Still others quietly adjust how easily future messages will be received. It is less like flipping a switch and more like hundreds of voices joining together in a calm conversation. The nervous system is not interested in perfection. It is interested in flexibility. Every experience you have ever lived gently changes these meeting places. A familiar melody, learning to ride a bicycle, reading a favorite book, comfort from a friend, even the quiet act of listening to these words. Each experience leaves tiny traces behind. Some pathways become a little easier to follow. Others gradually become quieter with time. The bridges themselves slowly change. In this way, the nervous system is never exactly the same from one day to the next. It is quietly shaped by every ordinary moment of life. Perhaps that is one of its most beautiful qualities. It remembers without needing permission. It adapts without announcing its work. It quietly reshapes itself through countless tiny conversations that no one ever hears. Even now, while you rest comfortably, billions of these peaceful bridges are carrying gentle messengers from one neuron to another. No traffic jams, no confusion, only an endless exchange of tiny letters, patiently delivered across invisible rivers throughout your body. And as more of these quiet conversations overlap, something even more remarkable begins to emerge. Individual whispers become pathways, pathways become patterns, patterns become living networks that quietly learn, adapt, and slowly change with every experience you have ever known. Countless woodland trails that slowly become well-worn paths as more travelers quietly walk them together. For a little while, imagine returning to the quiet forest once again. The trees are still there, their listening branches gently reaching toward one another. The tiny bridges between them continue carrying peaceful letters from one neighbor to the next. Nothing has changed. And yet, something entirely new is beginning to appear. If you could somehow rise high above this forest and quietly look down, you might notice that the trees are no longer standing in complete isolation. Between them, countless narrow trails have begun to emerge. Some are faint, barely visible beneath the leaves. Others have become smooth, familiar paths, shaped by countless gentle footsteps over many years. The nervous system grows in much the same way. A single neuron is remarkable. Two neurons sharing a conversation are even more remarkable. But it is only when thousands, millions, and eventually billions of neurons begin working together that something truly extraordinary begins to emerge. Scientists call these collections of cooperating neurons neural circuits. Tonight, you might simply think of them as living pathways. Every pathway has a purpose. Some quietly carry information from your eyes. Others help you recognize familiar voices. Some gently coordinate your breathing. Others help you remember the smell of fresh rain or the face of someone you have not seen for years. No single pathway performs every task. Instead, countless pathways quietly cooperate, each contributing one small part to a much larger story. Imagine walking through that peaceful forest every morning. On the first day, there is almost no trail beneath your feet. You gently step over grass and fallen leaves. The second day feels much the same. But after many weeks, something subtle begins to happen. The grass bends. The leaves settle. The earth becomes a little firmer. Without anyone planning it, a path has appeared. The nervous system follows a surprisingly similar rhythm. Every experience leaves behind the smallest trace. Every repeated movement becomes just a little easier. Every familiar sound becomes a little quicker to recognize. Every practiced skill quietly shapes the pathways that carried it. The more often a pathway is used, the more comfortably future messages can travel along it. This does not happen overnight. It happens patiently, almost invisibly, like rain slowly smoothing a stone beside a quiet stream. You have experienced this countless times throughout your life. The first time you tied your shoes, every movement demanded careful attention. Each loop seemed uncertain. Each pull required thought. Today, if you still tie your shoes, your hands often begin moving before you have consciously planned each step. The pathway has become familiar. The conversation has become effortless. The same gentle process quietly unfolds whenever someone learns to play a musical instrument, to ride a bicycle, to speak another language, to write their own name, or even to recognize the voice of someone they love. Every repetition gently strengthens the living pathway. Of course, not every pathway exists because of learning. Some are present almost from the beginning of life. Imagine accidentally touching something unexpectedly hot. Before you have time to think, before you have time to decide, your hand has already begun pulling away. It feels almost magical. But beneath that simple moment lies one of the nervous system's quietest achievements. Some pathways are designed to respond with extraordinary speed. Rather than waiting for the brain to carefully consider every possibility, nearby networks within the spinal cord can begin protecting the body almost immediately. These rapid protective responses are often called reflexes. Tonight, you might simply imagine them as trusted guardians quietly standing beside familiar gates. They do not stop to debate every situation. They simply respond with calm efficiency whenever protection is needed. Only afterward does the fuller conversation reach the brain, allowing you to become consciously aware of what has happened. It is another reminder that the nervous system is constantly caring for you, often before you even realize there is something to notice. As scientists have learned more about these living pathways, they have discovered something even more surprising. The brain does not simply receive information from the body. It quietly builds maps of the body within itself. Imagine unfolding an old hand-drawn map of a peaceful countryside. Every river is marked. Every village has its place. Every winding road is carefully remembered. Your brain carries remarkably similar maps. Not maps of mountains or forests, but maps of your own body. There are gentle patterns representing your hands, your face, your feet, your lips, your shoulders, even the position of your fingers while your eyes remain closed. These maps allow your brain to know where your body is, without needing to constantly look. It is one of the reasons you can reach for a cup in the dark or scratch an itch without carefully watching every movement. The map quietly guides you. Sometimes, these maps reveal something deeply mysterious. There are people who have lost an arm or a leg through illness or injury. And yet, many continue to feel as though that missing limb is still present. Some even experience warmth, pressure, an itch, or pain. At first, this seems impossible. How can you feel something that is no longer there? The answer appears to lie within the brain's remarkable maps. The body has changed. But the map inside the brain may remain for a while, continuing its quiet conversation as though nothing has happened. It is one of the most touching reminders that what we experience is not created by the body alone. It is gently shaped by the nervous system's interpretation of the body. Even more remarkable is that these maps can slowly change. Some therapists use a simple mirror to help the brain gently update its understanding after the loss of a limb. By watching the reflection of a healthy hand moving naturally, the brain sometimes begins reshaping its own internal map. The discomfort may gradually soften, not because the mirror performs magic, but because the nervous system remains wonderfully adaptable. It is always listening, always learning, always willing to revise its understanding when given new experiences. That quiet ability to reshape itself is one of the greatest gifts the nervous system possesses. It does not cling stubbornly to yesterday. It gently adjusts to today. Every conversation leaves a trace. Every trace has the potential to become a pathway. Every pathway can slowly become part of the living landscape that makes you who you are. As you continue resting peacefully, countless pathways are quietly carrying messages through your brain and body. Some have existed since your earliest days. Others formed only recently. Some are growing stronger. Some are gently fading away. Together, they create a landscape that is uniquely yours, changing so gradually that you almost never notice it from one day to the next. And hidden within those ever-changing pathways lies an even deeper mystery. Somehow, from all of these tiny conversations, the nervous system does far more than simply carry information. It quietly begins creating the world you believe you see, hear, touch, and understand every single day. An artist quietly painting a landscape before the morning light fully arrives. As countless living pathways continue carrying their gentle conversations through the quiet landscape of your nervous system, something extraordinary begins to happen. Those pathways do not simply move information from one place to another. They begin creating a world, not the world outside your body, the world you experience inside your mind. It may sound surprising at first. When you open your eyes each morning, it feels as though the world simply appears. The room is already there. The light is already shining through the window. The colors already exist. The familiar shape of a chair, a cup, or a favorite book seems to arrive all at once, complete and unquestioned. It feels effortless, almost automatic. But beneath that effortless experience, billions of tiny conversations are quietly unfolding. Your brain is not simply opening a window and looking out. It is carefully building an understanding of everything around you. Imagine an artist sitting before a blank canvas just before sunrise. Outside, the landscape is still wrapped in soft darkness. Only the faintest outlines can be seen. Rather than waiting for every detail to become perfectly visible, the artist begins painting gently, using memory, experience, and expectation to complete what cannot yet be fully seen. As more light slowly fills the sky, the painting becomes richer, more accurate, more complete. Your brain works in a remarkably similar way. It does not wait for every tiny detail before creating your experience. Instead, it quietly begins painting the world, using everything it has learned throughout your life. The light entering your eyes is only one part of the story. Your memories contribute another part. Your expectations quietly add another. Your previous experiences gently guide the rest. Together, they create what feels like effortless reality. Scientists sometimes describe this idea by saying that the brain is constantly making predictions. That word can sound rather technical, so tonight it may be easier to imagine something gentler. Perhaps your brain is quietly making its best guess. Not a careless guess, a thoughtful one. Every moment, it asks itself a simple question: what is most likely happening right now? Then, as new information continues arriving from your senses, it gently adjusts its understanding. Again and again, thousands of times every second. This quiet process happens so smoothly that you almost never notice it. Imagine walking into your own kitchen in the middle of the night. The room is darker than usual. Perhaps only a little moonlight reaches through the window. Even so, you rarely need to examine every object one by one. You already have a gentle expectation of where the table stands, where the doorway waits, where your favorite mug is usually resting. Your brain quietly combines the little information your eyes receive with years of familiar experience. Together, they create a confident picture of the room. You are not seeing less. You are gently completing what cannot yet be fully seen. This remarkable ability allows you to move through the world with surprising ease. If your brain insisted on examining every tiny detail from the beginning each time you opened your eyes, even the simplest morning would feel impossibly slow. Recognizing a familiar face might take several minutes. Crossing a room could become exhausting. Instead, your nervous system quietly uses yesterday to help understand today. It is one of the reasons the world feels so beautifully familiar. Of course, this gentle way of understanding reality also explains why our experience is not always perfectly accurate. Sometimes the brain fills in details that are not quite there. Perhaps you have glanced at a coat hanging quietly in a dark room, and for just a moment, imagined it was a person standing silently in the corner. A second look reveals the truth. Nothing changed about the coat. Instead, your brain simply made its best prediction using limited information. It quietly preferred a complete picture over an unfinished one. This happens far more often than most of us realize. Our experience of reality is not a perfect photograph. It is closer to a beautiful painting that is continuously being updated. Every new sound, every gentle movement, every familiar scent, every small change in light, each one adds another careful brushstroke. There is something deeply comforting about this. It reminds us that perception is not a machine collecting facts. It is a living conversation. Imagine once more that peaceful artist, sitting before the canvas. With every passing moment, another color is added. A shadow becomes a tree. A distant shape becomes a mountain. A few quiet reflections become the surface of a lake. The painting grows richer, not because the artist suddenly learns everything, but because each new detail gently refines what already exists. Your brain quietly paints the world in much the same way. Even something as simple as reading these words depends upon countless predictions unfolding together. Your eyes do not stop at every individual letter. Instead, your brain recognizes familiar patterns almost instantly. It quietly anticipates where one word ends and another begins. It gently prepares for the rhythm of each sentence before your conscious mind even notices. That is one reason reading can feel so effortless after years of practice. The pathways have become wonderfully familiar. The predictions have become beautifully refined. The same gentle process helps you recognize the voices of people you love. You often know who is speaking after hearing only a single word, sometimes even before the first complete sentence has been spoken. Your brain has spent years quietly learning those patterns. Now it greets them, almost like an old friend. Even vision itself is far more active than it first appears. Your eyes are constantly making tiny, almost invisible movements. Rather than remaining perfectly still, they gently explore the world, collecting countless little pieces of information. The brain patiently gathers those fragments and weaves them into one smooth, continuous experience. Without this quiet weaving, the world might feel like scattered puzzle pieces that never quite came together. Instead, everything feels whole, seamless, natural. Perhaps the most beautiful realization is this: the brain does not create reality to deceive you. It creates reality to help you live within it. Its quiet predictions are acts of care. They allow you to move confidently, to recognize familiar faces, to understand spoken words, to enjoy music, to watch clouds drift across the sky without needing to consciously assemble every tiny detail. The world you experience each day is not simply delivered to you. It is gently crafted, moment by moment, through billions of tiny conversations, quietly working together. And those conversations are only just beginning. For while your brain paints the world outside you, another collection of gentle voices is constantly describing something even closer. The quiet world within your own body, where thousands of invisible reporters are patiently sending news about every breath, every heartbeat, every movement, and every subtle sensation you have never needed to notice. Thousands of gentle reporters quietly gathering small pieces of news from every corner of your body, all bringing their observations back to one peaceful newsroom. The world your brain quietly paints is beautiful, but no painter works without inspiration. Every brushstroke begins with information. Every gentle adjustment begins with another small observation. And so, scattered throughout your body are countless quiet reporters, each patiently watching a different part of your world. Some never stop listening. Some never stop watching. Others quietly notice warmth, movement, pressure, or the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Together, they create an endless flow of tiny updates that never truly comes to an end. Imagine a peaceful village spread across a wide valley. In every home lives a friendly neighbor. Each morning, every neighbor writes a short letter describing what they have quietly noticed. One writes about the weather. Another mentions the river flowing a little faster. Someone else notices flowers beginning to bloom. None of these letters tells the whole story. But when they all arrive together, the village understands the day. Your nervous system works in a remarkably similar way. No single sense explains your world. Instead, thousands upon thousands of tiny observations quietly come together, allowing your brain to build a rich and continuous experience of life. Perhaps the sense we think about most often is vision. It feels as though our eyes simply capture the world like a camera. Yet, as we discovered a little earlier, your eyes are not quietly storing perfect pictures. They are collecting countless small pieces of light. Those tiny pieces travel inward as gentle messages, where the brain patiently assembles them into the colorful, familiar world you experience every day. Even now, while you read or listen, your eyes are never completely still. They make tiny, graceful movements almost constantly. They drift, pause, shift ever so slightly. Each movement gathers another little piece of the scene before you. The brain gently weaves those countless fragments together until everything feels wonderfully smooth. It is rather like watching thousands of tiny threads becoming a single beautiful tapestry. Nearby, another group of quiet reporters is listening instead of watching. Deep within your ears, delicate structures respond to the gentle vibrations moving through the air. A distant bird, the soft hum of a fan, rain against a window, the quiet rhythm of someone's footsteps in another room. Each vibration becomes another peaceful message traveling toward the brain. By itself, a single vibration means very little. Together, countless tiny patterns become voices, music, laughter, and the comforting sounds that make every place feel familiar. Then there is touch, perhaps the most constant companion of all. Even now, without making any effort, your skin quietly notices the surface supporting your body. It notices the softness of fabric, the gentle movement of air, the warmth of your hands, the coolness of a nearby pillow. Most of these sensations never ask for your attention. They simply reassure the brain that everything remains exactly where it should be. Taste and smell work together in a surprisingly gentle partnership. Imagine enjoying a warm bowl of soup on a quiet evening. It may seem as though your tongue alone recognizes every flavor, but much of what you describe as taste is quietly enriched by scent. Tiny particles drift upward through the back of the nose, adding layer upon layer of subtle detail. Without those quiet messages, familiar foods would seem strangely incomplete. Sweetness might remain. Saltiness might still be noticed. Yet many of the rich, comforting flavors you know so well would become little more than soft echoes of themselves. There is another sense that many people rarely think about, even though it quietly serves them every waking moment. Imagine closing your eyes for a moment and gently lifting one hand. Even without looking, you still know where your hand is. You know whether your elbow is bent or straight. You know if your fingers are gently curled or fully open. This quiet awareness comes from a remarkable sense called proprioception. Tonight, you might simply think of it as your body's inner sense of position. Tiny reporters within your muscles, joints, and tendons continually send gentle updates about where every part of your body is resting or moving. Without them, even the simplest actions would become surprisingly difficult. Walking across a room would require constant watching. Reaching for a cup might feel uncertain. Every movement would need careful visual guidance. Instead, your nervous system quietly keeps an internal map, allowing your body to move with graceful confidence, even in darkness. Yet there is an even quieter sense still. One that almost never appears in ordinary conversation. While some reporters describe the world around you, others spend their entire lives quietly watching the world within you. This gentle awareness is often called interoception. You do not need to remember its name. It is enough to know that your body is constantly sending peaceful updates from deep inside itself. One reporter notices the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. Another quietly measures each slow breath. Others observe whether your stomach is comfortably full or beginning to feel hungry. Some notice thirst. Others quietly monitor warmth or coolness. Still others gently observe the countless tiny changes that help keep your body balanced from one moment to the next. Most of these reports never enter your conscious thoughts. If they did, everyday life might feel overwhelming. Instead, the brain quietly reads them in the background, making gentle adjustments long before you notice anything at all. Your breathing naturally changes during sleep. Your heartbeat becomes a little slower during moments of calm. Your body quietly responds to warmth by helping you cool down, and to cold by helping you stay warm. These countless little conversations continue without interruption, asking almost nothing from your attention. It is another example of the nervous system's remarkable kindness. It quietly manages thousands of responsibilities so that your conscious mind can simply enjoy living. What is perhaps most extraordinary is that none of these senses work alone. When you reach for a familiar mug, vision helps you locate it. Touch confirms its smooth surface. Your inner sense of position quietly guides your hand toward it. Your muscles adjust with gentle precision. Even before taking a sip, the aroma begins preparing your experience of its flavor. Your brain patiently gathers every one of these small reports, compares them with countless memories, and gently weaves them into a single seamless moment. You never experience 7 separate senses. You experience one beautifully unified world. The reporters disappear into the story they help create. Perhaps that is their greatest achievement. The more faithfully they perform their quiet work, the less you ever notice them. And somewhere beyond those gentle reports, another remarkable group of pathways is patiently waiting. For receiving information is only half of the conversation. Soon, those same quiet networks will begin sending careful instructions back through the body, allowing thousands of muscles to move together with such effortless harmony that a simple step across the room feels almost as natural as breathing itself. A peaceful orchestra, in which every musician listens so carefully that no conductor is ever needed. Long before your hand reaches for a familiar cup, before your foot takes another quiet step, and even before you become aware that you have decided to move at all, another conversation has already begun. It begins so softly that you never hear it. It unfolds so naturally that you rarely notice it. And yet, every graceful movement you have ever made has quietly depended upon it. Imagine sitting in a beautiful concert hall just before the music begins. Hundreds of musicians are waiting patiently. No one appears hurried. No one speaks loudly. Every instrument rests in peaceful silence. Then, almost without warning, the music begins. What is remarkable is that there is no visible conductor standing at the front, no raised baton, no dramatic gestures. Instead, every musician listens so carefully to everyone else that the entire orchestra moves together as though sharing a single quiet thought. Your nervous system guides movement in much the same way. There is no single place inside your brain shouting orders to every muscle. Instead, countless regions quietly cooperate, each contributing one small part to an effortless performance. Imagine that you decide to reach for a warm cup resting on a nearby table. The movement feels wonderfully simple. You see the cup, you reach toward it, your fingers gently wrap around it. Yet beneath that ordinary moment, an astonishing sequence of quiet conversations has already unfolded. Even before your hand begins moving, one region of the brain has started preparing a gentle plan. Scientists call this area the motor cortex. Tonight, you might simply imagine it as a thoughtful planner sitting quietly before a map. Its purpose is not to move every muscle directly. Instead, it gently sketches the first outline of the journey. It quietly asks, "Where would you like to go?" Once that gentle plan begins taking shape, another remarkable partner quietly joins the conversation. Deep within the brain is a structure called the cerebellum. Rather than imagining a complicated scientific name, perhaps you can simply think of it as the patient musician who listens most carefully. Its work is wonderfully subtle. It compares what you intended to do with what is actually happening. If your hand drifts slightly too far to one side, it quietly encourages a tiny adjustment. If you begin losing your balance while walking, it gently helps restore harmony before you even become aware that anything needed correcting. It rarely asks for attention. In fact, when it is working beautifully, you almost never notice it at all. The finest musicians are often the ones who make difficult performances appear effortless. The cerebellum quietly follows the same philosophy. Nearby, another gentle partner also contributes to every movement. This collection of deep brain structures is known as the basal ganglia. Rather than remembering its scientific name, imagine it as the orchestra's quiet rhythm keeper. It helps determine which movements should begin, which should remain still, and which should continue flowing smoothly. Every moment, countless possible movements are available. You could lift your hand, turn your head, blink, stretch your fingers, stand up, remain seated. The rhythm keeper quietly helps select the movement that best matches the moment, allowing your actions to flow naturally, rather than competing with one another. Together, these quiet partners create something remarkable. Planning, refining, choosing, adjusting, all before your conscious thoughts have finished noticing what is happening. As your arm begins reaching toward the cup, the conversation becomes even richer. Remember the quiet reporters we met earlier? They have not stopped sending their gentle updates. Tiny sensors within your muscles quietly report how much they are stretching. Others notice the position of your elbow. Still others gently describe the angle of your wrist and fingers. Your eyes continue providing fresh information about the distance between your hand and the cup. Every tiny report quietly returns to the brain. The movement is not simply planned once and forgotten. It is continuously guided. Imagine walking across a narrow wooden bridge stretching over a peaceful stream. With every step, you naturally make tiny adjustments. Perhaps a gentle breeze shifts your balance. Perhaps one board bends slightly beneath your foot. You do not stop to calculate every correction. Instead, your body quietly responds, almost before you notice the change. Movement is much like that bridge crossing. Each moment gently influences the next. Every tiny adjustment prepares the following one. The result is not perfect precision. It is graceful adaptation. Perhaps nowhere is this quiet adaptation more beautiful than when we first learn a new skill. Think back to the first time you learned to ride a bicycle. At the beginning, every movement demanded careful attention. Balance felt uncertain. Steering required concentration. Even looking ahead while keeping the bicycle upright seemed surprisingly difficult. Your nervous system was building entirely new conversations. At first, those pathways were delicate, unfamiliar, almost like walking through tall grass where no clear trail yet existed. But with gentle repetition, something remarkable happened. The pathways slowly became smoother. The conversations became more familiar. Balance required less effort. Turning became easier. Eventually, you were no longer thinking about every movement. You were simply riding. People often call this muscle memory. The phrase is charming, but it can be slightly misleading. Your muscles are not storing memories in the way your brain does. Instead, the nervous system has quietly strengthened the pathways that guide those movements. The conversations have become so familiar that they unfold with extraordinary ease. The same gentle transformation happens whenever someone learns to play the piano, dance across a stage, knit a scarf, write with graceful handwriting, or even type on a keyboard without looking down. At first, every movement asks for attention. Later, attention becomes almost unnecessary. The conversation has learned its own rhythm. Even standing perfectly still is far more active than it appears. Thousands of tiny adjustments continue every second. Small muscles quietly shift. Balance gently changes. Your inner sense of position keeps updating the brain. Your ears contribute subtle information about movement. Your eyes quietly stabilize the world before you. All of these gentle conversations continue without interruption. Stillness, it turns out, is simply movement so beautifully balanced that it feels almost invisible. Perhaps that is one of the quietest miracles of the nervous system. It transforms unimaginable complexity into effortless simplicity. You never feel the countless corrections. You simply feel yourself walking, reaching, smiling, breathing, living. The orchestra performs without applause. The musicians never ask to be noticed. They simply continue listening to one another with remarkable patience, allowing every ordinary movement to become calm, graceful, and wonderfully familiar. And with every gentle movement you repeat throughout your life, those quiet conversations continue changing ever so slightly, patiently reshaping themselves until experience itself becomes part of the pathways that guide tomorrow's actions. A living garden that quietly reshapes itself with every changing season. There is something quietly remarkable about a garden. If you visit it only once, it may seem almost unchanged. The trees still stand where they stood before. The winding paths still lead to the same quiet corners. The flowers seem familiar. Everything appears comfortably predictable. But return a few weeks later, and you begin to notice gentle differences. Tiny new leaves have appeared where bare branches once rested. A climbing vine has stretched a little farther along an old stone wall. One flower has quietly faded, while another has just begun to bloom. Nothing happened all at once. There was no single dramatic moment. The garden simply continued growing. Patiently. Almost invisibly. Your brain is very much like that living garden. For many centuries, people believed that once the brain reached adulthood, it became largely fixed. They imagined it as something complete, a finished masterpiece that could slowly wear with age, but could never truly change its design. Today, we understand something far more beautiful. The brain is not a finished sculpture carved from stone. It is a living landscape. Every experience gently reshapes it. Every conversation between neurons leaves behind a tiny trace. Every skill, every memory, every new discovery becomes another quiet season in the garden. Scientists often describe this remarkable ability with a long word: neuroplasticity. Tonight, you do not need to remember that name. Instead, you can simply think of it as the brain's quiet ability to reshape itself. Unlike a machine that remains exactly the same every day it is used, the nervous system is constantly learning from its own experiences. Imagine once again those woodland trails we explored earlier. At first, each path was little more than soft grass, beneath careful footsteps. As more travelers passed along the same route, the trail slowly became clearer, not because someone planned it, but because gentle repetition quietly shaped the landscape. Your brain follows a remarkably similar rhythm. Each time you practice something, certain conversations become a little easier. The pathways carrying those conversations grow slightly more familiar. The next journey requires just a little less effort. Then another, and another. Over time, what once demanded careful concentration begins to feel wonderfully natural. Perhaps you have experienced this while learning to type on a keyboard. At first, every letter requires searching. Your eyes move constantly. Your fingers hesitate. Each word asks for your full attention. Months later, something has changed. Your fingers begin moving, almost before you consciously think about each letter. The pathways have become well-traveled. The conversation has become beautifully familiar. The same quiet transformation happens whenever someone learns to swim, to speak another language, to play the violin, to recognize the songs of birds outside a bedroom window. Learning is not simply adding information to the brain. Learning is gently reshaping the pathways through which information travels. Yet growing is only half of the story. A healthy garden does not become more beautiful simply by allowing every branch to grow forever. Sometimes a careful gardener quietly trims older branches, not because they were mistakes, but because removing them allows healthier growth elsewhere. The nervous system quietly follows a similar wisdom. Throughout life, some connections become stronger because they are used often. Others gradually become less active. Some eventually disappear altogether. Scientists sometimes describe this gentle process as pruning. Rather than imagining something being taken away, perhaps it is kinder to picture a gardener making space for fresh sunlight to reach young leaves. The brain is not losing itself. It is making room for new possibilities. This quiet balance between strengthening and simplifying allows the nervous system to remain wonderfully flexible. Imagine trying to remember every single leaf that has ever fallen from every tree you have ever seen, every cloud, every conversation, every step you have ever taken. Life would quickly become overwhelming. Instead, the brain quietly keeps what is useful, while allowing countless small details to drift gently into the background. Forgetting, in its own peaceful way, becomes another form of wisdom. There are also certain seasons of life when the garden seems especially eager to grow. A young child learns language with astonishing ease. New sounds quickly become familiar. Faces are recognized almost effortlessly. Movements become increasingly graceful with remarkable speed. Scientists sometimes describe these years as important periods of rapid learning. It is not that learning becomes impossible later, far from it. Rather, the young garden grows with extraordinary enthusiasm. Its pathways are eager to explore new directions. As adulthood arrives, the pace becomes gentler. The garden continues changing, but with a little more patience. Every new experience still leaves a mark. Every meaningful conversation still plants a seed. Every book quietly read. Every melody lovingly practiced. Every place carefully explored. The garden never truly stops growing. This ability to change also offers something deeply hopeful. When the nervous system experiences injury, recovery is often possible because the remaining pathways begin searching for new ways to communicate. Some conversations find different routes. Others become stronger to support their neighbors. Healing is rarely fast. It asks for patience, gentle repetition, quiet encouragement, much like water slowly finding another path around a fallen tree. The journey continues, even if the landscape has changed. Perhaps one of the most surprising discoveries of modern neuroscience is that habits quietly reshape the brain every single day. The things we repeat become easier to repeat. The conversations we return to most often gradually become the conversations our brains know best. If you practice kindness, those gentle pathways become a little more familiar. If you practice curiosity, those conversations quietly deepen. If you spend time learning something new, your nervous system patiently adjusts itself to welcome that new understanding. The brain, in many ways, becomes the story of the conversations it has repeated throughout a lifetime. That thought is neither frightening nor demanding. It is quietly comforting. It reminds us that change rarely arrives through dramatic moments. Instead, it comes through ordinary days, quiet mornings, gentle evenings, small choices, repeated with patience. Just as rivers slowly shape valleys, without ever hurrying, your nervous system quietly reshapes itself through every experience you live. Even now, while you rest comfortably, countless tiny conversations are leaving delicate traces behind. These words, your breathing, the gentle sounds surrounding you, the peaceful rhythm of this evening. None of them may seem especially important on their own. Yet together, they become another quiet season in the living garden of your mind. And among all the pathways that continue growing there, some will remain only for a little while others will quietly stay with you for years, becoming the gentle memories that help tell the story of your life. Footprints appearing along a quiet beach, where some are washed away with the tide, while others slowly become lasting paths across the landscape. If every gentle conversation inside your nervous system disappeared the moment it ended, life would feel very different. Every sunrise would seem like the first. Every face would be unfamiliar. Every voice would sound as though you had never heard it before. You could still experience each moment as it arrived, but each experience would quietly drift away before the next one began. Life would become a collection of beautiful moments, with no thread gently weaving them together. Fortunately, your nervous system has learned another remarkable skill. It remembers, not perfectly, not like a camera carefully storing every detail, but softly, patiently, almost like the sea leaving delicate footprints along a quiet shore. Imagine walking alone across a peaceful beach just after sunrise. The sand is smooth and untouched. Each step leaves a clear impression behind you. Some footprints are shallow. The next gentle wave quietly smooths them away almost at once. Others sink a little deeper into the damp sand, remaining long after you have continued your walk. Still others become part of a well-traveled path that many people quietly follow over the years. Your memories form in much the same way. Not every experience is meant to remain forever. Some are simply passing visitors. Others quietly become lifelong companions. Every memory begins with a brief encounter. A sound, a scent, a face passing by, a gentle touch, a sentence quietly spoken. For a very short moment, the nervous system holds these tiny impressions, almost exactly as they arrive. Scientists sometimes describe this as sensory memory. Tonight, you might simply imagine it as the echo that lingers for a moment after a bell has softly stopped ringing. The sound has already faded, yet something of it quietly remains, long enough for the brain to decide whether it deserves further attention. Most of these gentle echoes disappear almost immediately. There are simply too many. Imagine trying to remember every leaf that fluttered past your window this afternoon. Every distant conversation, every passing breeze. Your mind would soon become impossibly crowded. Instead, the nervous system quietly allows countless small impressions to drift away, making space for new experiences still waiting to arrive. Occasionally, however, one experience gently asks to remain. Perhaps someone tells you a new telephone number. Perhaps you are following the beginning of a story. Perhaps you are listening to these very words, allowing each sentence to connect gently with the one before it. For a little while, your brain keeps this information close at hand. Scientists often call this working memory. Tonight, perhaps it is easier to imagine a small wooden table beside a comfortable chair. Only a few objects can rest upon it at once. A book, a warm cup of tea, a pair of reading glasses. If too many things are placed there, the table quickly becomes crowded. Working memory is much the same. It gently holds a small number of thoughts while deciding what should happen next. Some remain only for a few moments before quietly slipping away. Others begin a much longer journey. Deep within the brain rests a remarkable structure called the hippocampus. Its name comes from an ancient word because its graceful shape reminded early observers of a tiny seahorse. You do not need to remember the name tonight. Instead, perhaps imagine it as a peaceful village librarian. Every day, countless visitors arrive, carrying little bundles of experiences. A familiar smile, the smell of fresh bread, the first snowfall of winter, a favorite melody. The librarian does not keep every bundle forever. Instead, each one is gently examined. Some are returned almost immediately. Others are carefully labeled before finding a quiet place among the shelves. Over time, the most meaningful experiences gradually become part of the library itself. This process takes patience. Memories rarely become lasting the instant they appear. Like wet paint slowly drying beneath the morning sun, they need time to settle. They become stronger through gentle repetition, through reflection, through sleep. Every evening while you rest, the nervous system quietly continues organizing the library. Some memories become more stable. Some are connected with older memories. Some are gently placed aside because they are no longer needed. The work continues without asking anything from you. Perhaps one of the most surprising discoveries in modern neuroscience is that remembering is not quite the same as opening a perfectly preserved book. Instead, every time you remember something, you quietly visit the library again. You gently remove the memory from its shelf. You experience it once more. And then, almost without noticing, you place it back. sometimes exactly as it was, sometimes ever so slightly changed. Perhaps a small detail becomes clearer, perhaps another quietly fades, perhaps a new feeling gently becomes attached to an old event. Memory is wonderfully alive. It is less like opening a photograph stored in a drawer, and more like listening to a favorite song, played softly by different musicians over many years. The melody remains familiar, yet each performance carries tiny differences. That is not a flaw. It is part of how the nervous system continues learning from the past while living in the present. Some memories remain especially vivid because they arrive carrying strong emotions. The joy of meeting someone you deeply care about. The peaceful excitement of watching snow fall for the first time. The comfort of hearing a familiar voice after a long absence. Emotions gently tell the brain, this moment matters. As a result, those memories often settle a little deeper into the landscape of the mind. Not because they are louder, but because they become woven together with many different conversations happening throughout the nervous system. And then there is forgetting. At first, forgetting may seem like the opposite of remembering. Yet perhaps it is better understood as another quiet form of balance. Imagine once more that peaceful beach. If every footprint remained forever, the sand would eventually become impossible to walk across. Fresh paths could never appear. The shoreline would lose its quiet simplicity. Instead, each gentle tide carefully smooths away many older impressions while leaving others beautifully intact. The nervous system quietly follows much the same wisdom. Some memories remain because they continue to guide your life. Others slowly soften around the edges. A few gently disappear altogether, not because they were unimportant, but because making room for tomorrow is just as essential as remembering yesterday. As you rest here now, your own library continues its patient work. Countless experiences from your life are resting peacefully upon invisible shelves. Some you could recall in an instant. Others may quietly return years from now, awakened by the scent of rain, the sound of distant laughter, or a familiar song carried softly through an open window. Every memory is another gentle conversation that never completely vanished. It simply found a quiet place to wait, and among those countless memories rests something even more mysterious. Some become facts, some become stories, some become habits, and some quietly become feelings, gently shaping the emotional landscape through which every future memory will one day grow. A peaceful valley where countless streams quietly meet, each bringing a little water, until together they become a gentle river. If memories are the quiet library of your life, then emotions are the gentle light that falls across its shelves. Every memory carries its own feeling. Some are wrapped in comfort, some in curiosity, some in quiet excitement. Others have softened with time, becoming calm reflections rather than vivid moments. It is almost impossible to separate memory from emotion, because the nervous system rarely stores experiences as simple collections of facts. Instead, every meaningful moment becomes part of a much larger conversation, a conversation between your brain, your body, and the world around you. Many people imagine emotions as something that happens only inside the brain. It is an understandable idea. After all, happiness seems to live in our thoughts. Sadness feels like something we experience in the mind. Fear often appears to arrive as a feeling before anything else. But the nervous system tells a quieter story. Emotion is never only a thought. It is a conversation shared by the entire body. Imagine standing in a peaceful valley just after a gentle rain. From every hillside, tiny streams begin making their way downward. Some are large. Some are so small they almost disappear beneath the grass. Each stream carries only a little water, yet as they quietly meet one another, they slowly become a river. An emotion grows in much the same way. Rarely does a single signal create a feeling. Instead, countless tiny observations quietly arrive together. Your breathing changes a little. Your heart gently speeds or slows. The muscles in your face soften. Your stomach offers its own quiet opinion. Old memories quietly awaken. Your brain compares all of these gentle reports, and gradually, almost effortlessly, a feeling begins to emerge. It is not created by one place. It is woven together from many peaceful conversations. Deep within the brain are several regions that help guide these conversations. Together, they are often described as part of the limbic system. You do not need to remember that name tonight. Instead, perhaps imagine a quiet circle of thoughtful friends sitting around a fire beneath a star-filled sky. Each friend notices something slightly different. One quietly watches for safety. Another gently remembers the past. A third helps the body prepare for tomorrow. No single voice controls the conversation. Wisdom emerges because they patiently listen to one another. One of these quiet companions is called the amygdala. Its scientific name may sound unfamiliar, but its purpose is surprisingly easy to imagine. Think of it as a gentle watchkeeper, not an anxious guard searching constantly for danger. Rather, a calm observer quietly asking, "Is this important?" Sometimes the answer is yes. A sudden loud sound, a child stepping into your path, the unexpected movement of something nearby. The watchkeeper gently invites the rest of the nervous system to pay closer attention. At other times, the answer is wonderfully peaceful. Everything is safe. The conversation continues without urgency. Nearby is another familiar companion. Earlier, we met the hippocampus, the quiet librarian who carefully helps organize memories. Tonight, we discover that the librarian rarely works alone. Whenever an experience carries strong emotion, the librarian and the watchkeeper quietly compare notes. Together, they gently decide whether this moment deserves a special place within the library. Perhaps that is why you can so clearly remember the comforting smell of bread baking in a family kitchen, or the sound of laughter shared with old friends years ago. The feeling helped the memory settle a little more deeply. Another quiet participant helps connect the brain with the rest of the body. Scientists call it the hypothalamus. For tonight, you might imagine it as a patient messenger standing beside many peaceful roads. When emotions begin changing, this gentle messenger quietly passes information toward the heart, the lungs, and many other parts of the body. Your breathing may become slower or quicker. Your heartbeat may gently change its rhythm. Your muscles may soften. Tiny changes quietly spread throughout the body, almost like ripples moving outward across a calm lake. The remarkable thing is that the conversation does not travel in only one direction. For many years, people imagined the brain giving orders while the body simply obeyed. Modern neuroscience paints a gentler picture. The body also speaks. Every moment, your heart quietly sends information upward. Your lungs describe the rhythm of each breath. Your stomach gently reports whether it feels comfortably satisfied or ready for another meal. Even your posture quietly becomes part of the conversation. One of the most beautiful pathways carrying these peaceful reports is known as the vagus nerve. Rather than remembering its scientific name, perhaps imagine it as a quiet country road connecting a peaceful village with a nearby city. Messages travel both ways. Sometimes the brain gently reassures the body. Sometimes the body quietly reassures the brain. Perhaps you have noticed that taking a slow, comfortable breath often brings a gentle sense of calm. Part of that experience comes from this ongoing conversation. As your breathing becomes slower and more relaxed, your body quietly sends new reports upward. The message is simple. Everything appears safe. The brain receives that peaceful update and gently adjusts its own activity in response. Calm encourages calm. The conversation quietly becomes softer. Other gentle messengers also take part in these emotional conversations. One helps the brain recognize moments that feel rewarding or meaningful. Another quietly supports emotional balance across many different networks. Yet another often becomes more active during moments of trust, closeness, and affection. You may know their scientific names: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Tonight, though, their names matter far less than the quiet roles they play. They are simply different kinds of letters being delivered across countless peaceful bridges. Some encourage curiosity. Some support steadiness. Some gently strengthen the feeling of connection between people. Together, they create an emotional landscape far richer than any single messenger could ever achieve. There is another beautiful idea that has begun to emerge from modern neuroscience. Just as your brain quietly predicts the world you see, it also gently predicts how you may feel. Imagine hearing an unexpected sound while walking through a dark forest. For one brief moment, your body may prepare itself before you even know exactly what made the sound. Then, as more information quietly arrives, your brain gently updates its understanding. Perhaps it was only leaves moving in the wind. The breathing softens. The heartbeat settles. The watchkeeper smiles quietly to itself. The prediction changes. Emotion, it seems, is not simply a reaction. It is part of the brain's ongoing effort to gently prepare you for whatever might come next. Perhaps that is why emotions can change so gracefully. A kind word, a familiar melody, the warmth of someone's hand, the peaceful sound of rain. Each becomes another quiet voice entering the conversation, gently changing the river's direction without ever needing to force it. As you rest here now, your own body continues this beautiful exchange. Your breathing rises and falls. Your heart quietly keeps its rhythm. Tiny signals travel gently between your body and your brain. Together, they create a peaceful emotional landscape that is always changing, always listening, and always adapting with remarkable kindness. And while these quiet conversations continue shaping how you feel, another gentle rhythm is slowly approaching. As evening deepens and wakefulness begins to soften, the nervous system prepares for one of its oldest and most beautiful rituals, allowing countless conversations to slow, reorganize, and quietly drift into the remarkable world of sleep. A peaceful city after sunset, where gentle night gardeners, librarians, and caretakers quietly begin their work while the world sleeps. As evening slowly settles over the world, something remarkable begins to change inside you. The conversations never stop. They do not fall silent when your eyes close. They do not disappear when your thoughts begin to wander. Instead, they simply change their rhythm. The busy conversations of the day gradually become quieter. The nervous system begins speaking in softer voices. It is almost as though an entire city is preparing for night. Imagine a peaceful town as the last golden light fades beyond the horizon. The shops gently close their doors. The streets become quieter. Windows begin glowing with warm light. People slowly return home. From a distance, everything appears wonderfully still. It might even seem as though the city has gone to sleep. But if you could quietly walk through those peaceful streets, you would discover that another kind of life has only just begun. Street cleaners quietly sweep the empty roads. Gardeners water flowers beneath the moonlight. Librarians carefully return books to their shelves. Repair workers inspect old bridges while traffic is gone. Electricians gently maintain the lights that will welcome tomorrow morning. The city has not stopped working. It has simply changed its priorities. Your nervous system follows a remarkably similar rhythm every night. While you sleep, countless conversations continue beneath your awareness. Only now, instead of helping you read, walk, speak, or solve problems, many of those conversations quietly turn toward repair, organization, and renewal. Sleep is not the absence of activity. It is one of the busiest and most important times in the life of the nervous system. It is the quiet night shift. As sleep gently deepens, the brain moves through different stages, each contributing something unique to the night's peaceful work. Some stages are calm and deeply restful. Others become surprisingly active. Rather than imagining sharply separated rooms, perhaps picture a long walk through a beautiful garden beneath the stars. Different paths gently lead from one peaceful place to another. Each path has its own atmosphere, its own quiet purpose. One of the first parts of this journey is often called non-rapid eye movement sleep. The name sounds rather technical, but what matters is its gentle character. During these peaceful hours, your breathing often becomes slower. Your heartbeat settles into a comfortable rhythm. The body relaxes. Many conversations throughout the nervous system begin shifting their attention away from the outside world. It is here that much of the body's quiet restoration begins. The day's gentle wear is patiently examined. Tiny repairs quietly unfold. The nervous system prepares itself for another tomorrow. It is almost like watching gardeners walk through a peaceful park before sunrise. No dramatic changes appear all at once. A fallen leaf is quietly removed. A young branch is gently supported. Fresh water reaches thirsty roots. Everything is accomplished through patience rather than urgency. While these peaceful hours continue, another important task quietly unfolds. Earlier, we visited the library of memory. Throughout the day, countless new experiences arrived, carrying little bundles of information. Conversations, faces, sounds, ideas, tiny discoveries. During waking hours, there is rarely enough quiet to organize them all. Night provides that opportunity. Imagine the village librarian returning after everyone else has gone home. The reading rooms are silent. The shelves wait patiently. One by one, books are carefully placed where they belong. Some are grouped beside older stories that resemble them. Others find entirely new places upon the shelves. A few are quietly set aside because they no longer need to remain. Your brain quietly performs a remarkably similar kind of organization. Experiences that seemed scattered during the day begin finding gentle connections with older memories. Learning becomes a little stronger. Understanding becomes a little clearer. The conversations are not being repeated for no reason. They are being woven into the larger story of your life. Scientists often describe this gentle process as memory consolidation. Tonight, perhaps it is easier simply to think of it as the library quietly putting every book back where it belongs. As the night continues, another fascinating stage gradually arrives. This is the time when dreams most often become vivid. Your eyes begin making tiny movements beneath closed eyelids. The brain becomes surprisingly active once again. The body, however, chooses a very different path. Most of your muscles become wonderfully still. This quiet stillness is one of the nervous system's most thoughtful acts of care. Imagine watching a beautiful play performed upon a peaceful stage. The actors move across imaginary mountains, oceans, forests, and distant cities. The audience travels with them, in imagination alone. No one expects the audience to climb onto the stage and begin acting out the story. In much the same way, while dreams unfold inside the mind, the body gently remains at rest. The nervous system quietly allows your imagination to wander, while helping your muscles remain calm and relaxed. Dreams can remain dreams. The sleeper can continue resting safely beneath warm blankets, while extraordinary adventures quietly unfold within the mind. Even while all of this is happening, another patient team has begun working behind the scenes. Throughout every waking day, the busy conversations of billions of neurons naturally leave behind tiny traces of their activity. Night offers an opportunity for careful housekeeping. Imagine those quiet city streets once more. The traffic has disappeared. Now the cleaning crews gently move through every neighborhood, washing sidewalks, clearing away yesterday's dust, and preparing everything for another peaceful morning. The brain has its own gentle cleaning system. While you sleep, fluids slowly move through the spaces surrounding countless cells, quietly helping carry away substances that have accumulated during the day's work. Nothing dramatic happens. No alarms sound. Only a patient rhythm of quiet renewal. It is another reminder that sleep is never simply doing nothing. It is careful maintenance carried out with remarkable kindness. Perhaps that is why, after a good night's sleep, familiar problems sometimes seem easier to understand. A difficult idea suddenly feels clearer. A forgotten name quietly returns. An emotional burden becomes a little lighter to carry. The nervous system has spent the night gently reorganizing its countless conversations. It has not erased yesterday. It has simply helped yesterday find its proper place. There is something deeply comforting about this nightly ritual. Every evening, without asking for permission, the nervous system quietly cares for itself. It slows, it sorts, it restores, it cleans, it prepares. You do not need to supervise any of it. The quiet conversations simply continue, just as they always have. Even now, if you are listening as sleep slowly approaches, those gentle changes may already be beginning inside you. Your breathing may have become a little slower, your muscles a little heavier, your thoughts a little softer around the edges. The busy conversations of the day are gradually giving way to the calm conversations of the night. And while those conversations continue beneath the peaceful surface of sleep, countless patient caretakers quietly begin another evening's work, tending to every pathway, every connection, and every tiny living cell that helps make tomorrow possible. A peaceful forest after a passing storm, where every living thing quietly begins growing again. When morning eventually returns, after a long and peaceful night, the city awakens. The streets become busy once more. The lights brighten. The conversations begin again. Yet what makes the morning possible is not only the work that happens during the day, it is also the quiet care that took place while almost no one was watching. The same is true for your nervous system. Every night, it quietly prepares for tomorrow. Every day, it gently adapts to whatever tomorrow brings. And throughout your entire life, another remarkable process continues almost unnoticed. It quietly repairs, not perfectly, not instantly, but with extraordinary patience. Imagine walking through a beautiful forest after a gentle storm. A few branches have fallen onto the path. Some leaves have been scattered by the wind. One young tree bends slightly where the rain was strongest. At first glance, the forest appears damaged. Yet if you return a few days later, you notice something surprising. Small shoots are already reaching toward the sunlight. Broken branches have begun drying and becoming part of the forest floor. Tiny plants quietly emerge where more light now reaches the ground. Nothing returns exactly as it was. Instead, the forest gently discovers a new balance. Your nervous system follows a remarkably similar path. Throughout every day of your life, countless tiny challenges appear. A small cut on your finger, a muscle that becomes tired after a long walk, a new skill that asks unfamiliar pathways to work together. Even ordinary living creates tiny moments that require adjustment. The nervous system quietly responds to all of them. Sometimes, the repairs are almost impossible to notice. Other times, they require weeks, months, or even years of patient healing. One of the most hopeful discoveries in neuroscience is that some nerves outside the brain and spinal cord can slowly grow again after injury. Imagine a narrow woodland trail blocked by a fallen tree. At first, travelers can no longer continue along the familiar route. The path seems to end. Yet over time, careful footsteps begin creating a gentle detour around the obstacle. Little by little, the journey becomes possible once again. Certain nerves throughout the body are capable of something surprisingly similar. If conditions are favorable, they can slowly extend toward their destination once more. The journey is measured not in sudden leaps, but in quiet persistence. Each day brings only the smallest change, yet those small changes patiently gather until meaningful progress becomes visible. The brain, however, tells a different story. Its pathways are wonderfully adaptable, yet many of its individual cells are far less able to replace themselves once they are lost. For many years, this led people to believe that recovery inside the brain was almost impossible. Today, scientists understand a gentler truth. The brain does not always recover by replacing what has been lost. Often, it recovers by teaching other pathways to help. Imagine an old bridge crossing a peaceful river. After many years, one section becomes too damaged to use. Rather than abandoning the village forever, nearby roads are slowly widened. A different bridge becomes stronger. Travelers quietly learn another route. The destination remains the same, even though the journey has changed. The nervous system often heals in much the same way. When one pathway becomes difficult to use, neighboring pathways may gradually take on new responsibilities. Conversations that were once quiet become stronger. New connections slowly emerge. Old connections discover new purposes. Recovery is not always about returning to yesterday. Sometimes it is about gently creating a new tomorrow. This remarkable flexibility is closely connected to the quiet ability we explored earlier. The nervous system never completely stops learning. Even after injury, experience continues shaping its pathways. Each careful movement, each gentle repetition, each patient attempt, all become invitations for the brain to continue adapting. Healing is rarely dramatic. It is wonderfully ordinary. One careful step, then another, almost like watching a tiny stream gradually carve its way through soft earth after the spring rain. There are moments when progress seems almost invisible. Yet beneath the surface, quiet conversations continue. Throughout life, the nervous system also learns to adapt to something every living creature experiences: the passing of time. As we grow older, some pathways become a little slower. Certain conversations require a little more patience. Memories may sometimes take longer to appear. Balance may ask for a little more attention than it once did. These gentle changes are a natural part of life's long journey. Yet aging is far from a story of endless decline. Imagine returning to that peaceful forest many decades after your first visit. The tallest trees now stretch farther toward the sky. Their trunks are wider. Their roots reach deeper into the earth. The forest is different from its younger self. but it possesses a quiet wisdom that only time could have created. The nervous system matures in much the same way. Older brains often draw upon decades of experience. Patterns become easier to recognize. Judgment grows calmer. The ability to see connections between ideas quietly deepens. Learning may unfold a little more slowly, yet it continues. Even late in life, new pathways can still emerge. New memories can still be formed. New skills can still be learned. The living garden never completely stops growing. Scientists continue discovering just how adaptable the nervous system remains throughout the human lifespan. People who learn a musical instrument later in life still reshape their brains. Those who begin painting, gardening, dancing, or learning another language continue building fresh conversations between neurons. Curiosity itself becomes gentle nourishment. Every meaningful experience encourages the landscape to keep evolving. Perhaps that is one of the most hopeful lessons hidden inside the nervous system. Perfection has never been its goal. Adaptation has. It does not insist that every pathway remain unchanged forever. Instead, it quietly asks, what is still possible? Then it begins working from there, day after day, season after season, without complaint, without hurry. Even now, as you rest comfortably, countless tiny repairs continue throughout your body. Proteins are quietly being renewed. Connections are gently strengthened. Cells are carefully supported. Tomorrow's conversations are already being prepared. And none of those quiet acts of care are carried out by neurons alone. Surrounding every pathway, beside every conversation, lives another remarkable community of patient helpers. They rarely receive attention. They seldom appear in illustrations of the brain. Yet without them, the quiet conversations of the nervous system could never continue for very long. A peaceful city whose quiet caretakers, gardeners, builders, electricians, and cleaners work through every hour of the day and night, allowing life to unfold without interruption. As we quietly discovered, every conversation inside the nervous system depends upon careful attention. Pathways are gently repaired. Memories are patiently organized. New experiences slowly become part of who you are. But perhaps the most surprising truth of all is this. The neurons we have spent so much time getting to know are not working alone, not even close. Imagine walking once more through that peaceful city at dawn. The streets are clean. The gardens are blooming. Bridges remain strong. The lights glow warmly. Fresh water reaches every home. The city feels calm, organized, and alive. If someone asked who made all of this possible, your first thought might be the people walking through the streets. Yet cities survive because of countless others who often remain unseen. Gardeners quietly care for the parks. Builders repair aging walls. Electricians keep lights glowing through the night. Cleaners prepare every street before the morning begins. Protectors quietly watch over neighborhoods while everyone else sleeps. Their work is so dependable that most people rarely notice it at all. Your nervous system has its own remarkable community of quiet caretakers. Scientists call these remarkable helpers glial cells. For many years, they received surprisingly little attention. Researchers focused almost entirely on neurons because neurons carry the conversations we recognize as thought, movement, memory, and sensation. The caretakers quietly continued doing their work in the background. Only in recent decades have scientists begun to appreciate just how extraordinary these gentle helpers truly are. If neurons are the storytellers, glial cells are the community that quietly makes every story possible. Imagine returning to that peaceful garden beneath the early morning sun. The flowers seem healthy. The trees stand tall. The pathways remain welcoming. Yet none of this could continue without gardeners patiently tending the soil beneath your feet. Some glial cells behave very much like those careful gardeners. One important group is known as astrocytes. Their name comes from their graceful, star-like shape. Tonight, however, it is enough to imagine them as gentle caretakers walking quietly through the garden. They help nourish nearby neurons. They carefully balance the environment surrounding each conversation. They quietly provide support whenever it is needed. They even help guide the movement of energy to the places where busy neurons are working hardest. The brain, although relatively small compared with the rest of the body, quietly asks for an extraordinary amount of energy every single day. Thoughts may feel weightless. Memories may seem effortless. Yet every tiny conversation requires fuel. The gardeners quietly help ensure that energy reaches the places where it is needed most. Without their patient work, the conversations between neurons could not continue for very long. Elsewhere in the city, another group of quiet helpers performs a very different task. Imagine skilled builders carefully wrapping important electrical cables inside protective coverings before they disappear beneath the streets. The builders are not creating the messages themselves. They are making sure those messages can travel safely and efficiently for years to come. Within the brain, this important work is carried out by cells called oligodendrocytes. You do not need to remember that name tonight. Instead, perhaps simply think of them as the patient builders. Earlier we spoke about myelin, the gentle insulation that helps electrical waves travel smoothly along long pathways. These builders quietly create and maintain much of that protective covering throughout the brain. Far from the brain, throughout the rest of the body, another community of builders performs a remarkably similar task. These are called Schwann cells. Rather than remembering another scientific name, you may simply imagine them as neighborhood builders, caring for the quieter roads leading through towns beyond the city center. Together, both kinds of builders help countless conversations travel comfortably across astonishing distances. One protects the great highways within the brain. The other quietly cares for pathways reaching every corner of the body. Still another remarkable group quietly serves as the city's cleaning and protection team. Imagine early morning, before anyone else has awakened. The streets are almost empty. A few careful workers gently collect fallen leaves. They remove broken branches after a storm. They quietly recycle what is no longer needed, leaving the city fresh for another day. Inside the nervous system, tiny caretakers called microglia perform surprisingly similar work. Rather than allowing damaged material to remain where it no longer belongs, they patiently clean, recycle, and help protect the delicate landscape surrounding neurons. Their work is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is careful housekeeping, carried out with extraordinary patience. Without them, yesterday's tiny debris would slowly accumulate, making tomorrow's conversations more difficult. Together, these quiet caretakers remind us that health is rarely created by a single remarkable event. More often, it grows from thousands of small acts of care repeated every day. A leaf quietly removed, a pathway gently repaired, fresh nourishment carefully delivered, protection patiently maintained. Perhaps there is another lesson hidden within their work. When we think about intelligence, we often imagine only the neurons, the cells carrying thoughts, the cells carrying memories, the cells carrying imagination. Yet intelligence does not flourish in isolation. It depends upon support, care, balance, maintenance. Even the brightest conversation needs a peaceful room in which to unfold. The nervous system understands this beautifully. Every remarkable neuron is surrounded by companions quietly helping it succeed. The storytellers and the caretakers depend upon one another completely. Modern neuroscience continues uncovering just how active these quiet helpers truly are. They do far more than simply stand nearby. They participate in shaping connections. They help influence learning. They respond when injuries occur. They quietly contribute to the remarkable flexibility we have explored throughout this journey. The more scientists listen, the more they discover that the nervous system has always been a community, rather than a collection of individuals. There is something deeply comforting about that idea. The conversations that create your thoughts are supported by countless quieter conversations devoted entirely to care. Perhaps life itself follows the same gentle wisdom. The most important work is not always the most visible. Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness happen quietly, almost unnoticed, creating the conditions that allow everything else to flourish. Even now, while you rest and your breathing grows slower, this unseen community continues its patient work. Gardeners quietly nourish. Builders strengthen delicate pathways. Cleaners gently tidy yesterday's traces. Protectors quietly stand watch. Together they care for billions of tiny conversations, asking for nothing in return except the opportunity to continue serving another peaceful day. And because of their quiet devotion, the nervous system remains remarkably resilient, even when the pathways of life become uncertain. For although these conversations are wonderfully adaptable, there are times when illness or injury gently interrupts them. Even then, the nervous system continues searching patiently for new ways to carry the conversation forward. An ancient city, where some roads become damaged, some bridges grow fragile, and yet the people never stop finding gentle new ways to keep the conversations alive. Throughout this quiet journey, we have followed countless gentle conversations. We have watched them begin inside a single neuron. We have followed them as they became tiny electrical waves, crossed peaceful bridges, formed living pathways, and gradually shaped memories, emotions, movement, and dreams. Most of the time, those conversations continue with remarkable faithfulness. Hour after hour, year after year, often for an entire lifetime. Yet like every living system in nature, the nervous system is not completely untouched by change. Sometimes the pathways become more difficult to travel. Sometimes a familiar bridge weakens. Sometimes a conversation grows quieter than it once was. Even then, something beautiful remains true. The nervous system rarely gives up easily. Imagine once more the peaceful city that has quietly accompanied us through much of this journey. For generations, its streets have connected every neighborhood. Its bridges have carried countless travelers. Its gardens have flourished beside calm rivers. Now imagine that, over many years, a few roads slowly become more difficult to travel. Not all at once, not through a single dramatic event, just little by little. The city does not immediately fall silent. People begin discovering different routes. Neighbors help one another. Builders quietly repair what they can. Life continues. The nervous system often responds with similar patience. Many neurological conditions are, in one way or another, interruptions to the conversations that normally flow so effortlessly. The exact causes differ. The pathways affected differ. The symptoms differ. Yet beneath those differences lies a common theme. The conversations have become more difficult. One example is Alzheimer's disease. Rather than imagining it as memories simply disappearing overnight, perhaps picture a beloved library whose shelves gradually become harder to organize. The books are still there. The librarian continues working with remarkable dedication, but finding the right shelf begins taking longer. Some familiar stories become difficult to locate. Others are quietly misplaced. Families often notice that recent conversations become harder to remember, while much older memories remain surprisingly clear. Scientists continue studying why these gentle changes unfold, and although many questions remain, each new discovery brings a deeper understanding of how to support both the brain and the people who care for it. Another condition affects movement more than memory. In Parkinson's disease, some of the quiet conversations that help movements begin and flow smoothly become less reliable. Imagine an orchestra whose rhythm keeper has gradually become quieter. The musicians still know the music. The instruments remain beautifully crafted. Yet beginning each movement may require a little more effort than before. Walking may become slower. Hands may tremble gently while resting. Simple actions can ask for remarkable patience. Even so, many people continue living rich, meaningful lives with the help of thoughtful treatments, regular movement, supportive communities, and ongoing medical care. Sometimes the interruption arrives much more suddenly. A stroke occurs when part of the brain no longer receives the steady support it needs from its blood supply. Imagine a bridge that unexpectedly becomes impossible to cross. For a time, the familiar route falls silent. Yet the story does not necessarily end there. As we discovered earlier, the nervous system possesses a remarkable ability to adapt. With rehabilitation, gentle repetition, and extraordinary patience, nearby pathways often begin discovering new routes around the damaged area. The journey may be different, it may take time, but the conversation can continue. Another condition reveals a different challenge altogether. In epilepsy, groups of neurons sometimes begin speaking together in unusually intense and uncoordinated ways. Imagine a peaceful choir in which every singer suddenly begins singing different parts of different songs at the same moment. The individual voices are not the problem. The difficulty lies in their timing. Modern medicines often help restore a gentler rhythm, allowing the choir to return to its quiet harmony. Scientists continue improving these treatments, helping many people live full and active lives. Elsewhere, another condition reminds us how important the nervous system's quiet builders truly are. Earlier, we met the patient cells that create the protective covering surrounding many nerve pathways. In multiple sclerosis, that protective covering can become damaged in certain places. Imagine sections of insulation gradually wearing away from important pathways within a peaceful city. Messages can still travel, but sometimes the journey becomes slower or less reliable. Researchers around the world continue developing treatments that help calm this process and preserve those precious conversations for as long as possible. There is also a condition known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The name is long, but tonight it is enough to understand its gentle place within our story. Here, some of the pathways that carry instructions from the brain to the muscles gradually become more difficult to use. As those conversations grow quieter, movement slowly becomes more challenging. Yet even in the face of profound difficulty, remarkable examples of human resilience continue to inspire scientists, families, caregivers, and communities across the world. Every person's story remains far greater than any diagnosis. Perhaps the most hopeful part of modern neuroscience is not the recognition that these conditions exist. It is the growing understanding that the nervous system continues adapting even while facing them. Rehabilitation teaches new pathways. Technology creates new possibilities for communication. Medicines continue improving. Researchers quietly uncover fresh discoveries every year. Families, therapists, nurses, physicians, and caregivers become part of the nervous system's wider story, helping support conversations that cannot continue alone. Hope, in neuroscience, is rarely loud. It does not usually arrive through sudden miracles. More often, it appears through thousands of patient discoveries gathered over many years. One careful study, another thoughtful observation, a new therapy, a better understanding, a quieter way of helping someone preserve the conversations that matter most. Perhaps there is something deeply human in all of this. The nervous system has spent our entire journey adapting to change, learning new skills, building new memories, recovering after challenges, growing older with quiet dignity. Even when illness gently interrupts some of its pathways, that remarkable spirit of adaptation often remains. The conversations may become different. Some may slow, others may need new routes. Some may require the support of many helping hands. Yet the desire to continue communicating, to continue connecting, remains one of the most enduring qualities of the living brain. As you rest peacefully now, billions of healthy conversations continue flowing quietly through your own nervous system. They ask for no applause. They simply continue their patient work, one gentle whisper after another. And somewhere, in laboratories, hospitals, universities, and quiet research rooms around the world, countless people are listening carefully to these same conversations, hoping to understand them just a little better than yesterday. Their discoveries are opening new doors toward the future, where science and compassion may one day help the nervous system speak with even greater freedom than ever before. A vast, unfinished map whose quiet pathways continue revealing themselves, one gentle conversation at a time. Throughout this journey, we have spent our time quietly listening. We listened to a single neuron waiting patiently beneath its listening branches. We followed tiny electrical waves as they traveled through peaceful pathways. We crossed gentle bridges where chemical messengers carried whispered conversations from one cell to the next. We watched those conversations become memories, emotions, movement, dreams, and the quiet awareness that accompanies every ordinary moment of life. For thousands of years, that is how humanity explored the nervous system. By listening, by observing, by wondering. Each generation added another careful brushstroke to an enormous painting that was still far from complete. Even today, that painting continues to grow. Imagine standing before an enormous map spread across a quiet wooden table. Some rivers have already been carefully drawn. Mountain ranges appear with beautiful detail. A few villages are marked with tiny handwritten names. Yet much of the landscape remains blank, not because nothing exists there, only because no one has explored it yet. The nervous system is very much like that unfinished map. Scientists have learned an astonishing amount, and yet every new discovery seems to reveal another beautiful mystery, waiting just beyond the edge of what we already know. One of the most remarkable dreams in modern neuroscience is not simply to understand individual neurons. It is to understand every conversation between them. Imagine visiting a great city for the first time. Learning the names of its buildings would certainly be interesting, but it would not tell you how the city truly lives. To understand that, you would need to see the roads connecting every neighborhood, the bridges crossing every river, the countless people quietly traveling from place to place throughout each day. The nervous system is much the same. A single neuron is fascinating. Yet it is the relationships between billions of neurons that quietly create thought, memory, imagination, and consciousness. Scientists have given this extraordinary idea a name. They call it the connectome. Tonight, you do not need to remember the word itself. Instead, simply imagine it as the most detailed map of conversations ever imagined. Not a map of buildings, a map of relationships, every tiny pathway, every quiet bridge, every gentle connection. Creating such a map is one of the greatest scientific challenges of our time. It asks for remarkable patience, powerful microscopes, advanced computers, years of careful observation. Even then, the work remains wonderfully unfinished. The more carefully scientists listen, the richer the conversation becomes. Modern computers have also become quiet companions in this journey. Imagine trying to read every page in an enormous library containing billions of books. One person could never finish the task alone. Yet a patient assistant, capable of recognizing gentle patterns, could quietly help organize the work. Artificial intelligence is beginning to play a similar role. Rather than replacing scientists, it often helps them discover patterns hidden within enormous collections of information. Tiny similarities, unexpected connections, gentle relationships that might otherwise remain unnoticed. It is less like replacing human curiosity and more like quietly handing a researcher a brighter lantern while exploring a vast cave. Together, both continue walking. Another remarkable idea has begun turning imagination into reality. For many years, people wondered whether the brain could one day communicate directly with technology. At first, it sounded almost like science fiction. Today, careful research has shown that such conversations are quietly becoming possible. Imagine someone who can no longer move their hands. The pathways carrying those instructions have become difficult to use. Yet many of the conversations inside the brain remain beautifully alive. Scientists have begun developing gentle devices capable of listening to some of those conversations. These systems are often called brain-computer interfaces. Tonight, perhaps it is easier to think of them as careful translators. They do not create thoughts, they simply listen. A person imagines moving a hand. The translator quietly recognizes patterns within the nervous system's conversations. Those patterns can then guide a computer, move a cursor across a screen, or help control an artificial limb. The goal is not to replace the nervous system, it is to help the conversation continue when familiar pathways have become difficult to travel. A similar spirit guides the development of neural prosthetics. Imagine once again that peaceful city where one important bridge has become damaged. Rather than abandoning the neighborhoods on either side, careful builders construct another crossing. The route may look different, yet neighbors can once again visit one another. Technology sometimes offers a similar kind of bridge, helping restore communication between the brain, the body, and the surrounding world. Elsewhere, physicians have discovered that carefully guiding tiny electrical signals into specific parts of the brain can sometimes ease certain movement disorders. This gentle approach is known as deep brain stimulation. Rather than imagining dramatic changes, perhaps picture a quiet conductor gently helping an orchestra rediscover its rhythm. The music was always there. Sometimes, it simply needed a little guidance to find its harmony again. Researchers are also exploring how stem cells may one day help replace or support damaged tissues. Imagine a young tree growing beside an ancient forest. It does not instantly become a towering oak. Instead, it slowly grows, adapting to the landscape around it. Scientists hope that one day, carefully guided cells may quietly help repair parts of the nervous system that currently remain difficult to heal. The journey is still unfolding. Many questions remain unanswered. Another area of research focuses on gene therapy. Rather than thinking about complicated biology, imagine discovering a tiny sentence inside an enormous instruction book that has been copied incorrectly. The hope is not to rewrite the entire book, only to gently correct a few important words, where doing so may help future conversations unfold more smoothly. Many of these ideas remain the subject of careful research. Some are already helping people. Others are still quietly growing within laboratories around the world. As exciting as these discoveries may be, they also invite gentle reflection. Whenever science gains new abilities, thoughtful questions naturally follow. How should these technologies be used? Who should benefit from them? How do we protect privacy when the conversations of the brain become easier to study? How do we ensure that compassion grows alongside knowledge? These are not problems waiting to frighten us. They are invitations to remain thoughtful. The nervous system has always reminded us that every conversation matters. Perhaps science should follow the same wisdom, listening carefully, responding gently, moving forward with patience. Perhaps the most beautiful realization is that every answer seems to uncover another question. The closer we look, the more wonder quietly appears. Each neuron leads to another. Each pathway opens into countless more. Each discovery reveals a landscape even larger than we imagined before. The map continues expanding beyond the horizon, and perhaps that is exactly as it should be. For the nervous system has never simply been a collection of cells, it has always been a living conversation, one that scientists continue learning to hear a little more clearly with each passing year. And as our understanding quietly grows, we find ourselves returning to the oldest question of all. After every neuron, every pathway, every memory, every dream, after all the conversations have gently woven themselves together, how do they become the simple, quiet experience of being you? A sky filled with countless quiet stars, each too small to light the night alone, yet together, creating the gentle glow beneath which every dream quietly unfolds. We have traveled a long way together, not by crossing mountains or sailing oceans, not by rushing from one discovery to the next. Instead, we have followed something much quieter, a conversation. It began with a single living cell, one patient listener waiting beneath its delicate branches. Then another joined, and another. Tiny electrical waves began their gentle journeys. Chemical messengers quietly crossed invisible bridges. Countless pathways slowly formed throughout a growing nervous system. Those pathways became movements. They became sensations. They became memories resting inside peaceful libraries. They became emotions flowing like gentle rivers between the body and the mind. Each evening, they quietly organized themselves while you slept. Each morning, they welcomed another ordinary day. Along the way, unseen caretakers patiently watched over every conversation. When pathways became damaged, the nervous system quietly searched for new roads. When scientists listened more carefully, entirely new landscapes began revealing themselves. Every step of our journey has returned to the same simple truth. Nothing works alone. Not one neuron, not one memory, not one emotion, not one dream. Everything you experience quietly emerges from countless gentle conversations unfolding together. Perhaps that leads us naturally to one final question. If billions of tiny conversations are happening every moment, how do they become you? It is one of the oldest questions human beings have ever asked. Philosophers have wondered about it. Scientists continue exploring it. Poets have written about it beneath moonlit skies. Children sometimes ask it without realizing how profound it truly is. What is consciousness? No one has yet discovered a complete answer. Perhaps that uncertainty is not something to fear. Perhaps it is something quietly beautiful. Science often grows not by replacing mystery, but by gently illuminating a little more of it with each generation. Imagine standing outside, beneath an endless night sky. Above you are countless stars. Each shines with its own quiet light. No single star creates the entire heavens. Yet together they become something breathtaking. Consciousness may be a little like that. No single neuron appears to contain your thoughts. No individual pathway seems to hold your entire identity. No solitary conversation explains the feeling of simply being alive. Instead, awareness may quietly emerge from billions upon billions of gentle conversations unfolding together, every moment of every day. Exactly how this happens remains one of science's greatest mysteries. And perhaps that mystery makes the journey even more meaningful. There is another fascinating discovery that quietly accompanies this question. For a long time, many people imagined that the brain became mostly inactive whenever it was not focused on a particular task. Modern neuroscience has revealed something surprisingly different. Even during moments of quiet rest, when you are simply gazing through a window, drifting through peaceful thoughts, or slowly preparing for sleep, certain gentle conversations continue. Scientists sometimes refer to these connected patterns as the default mode network. The name sounds rather technical. Tonight, perhaps it is easier simply to think of it as the brain's quiet wandering conversation. Imagine walking through a familiar garden without any particular destination. You are not trying to solve a problem. You are not searching for anything. You simply wander. Perhaps a flower reminds you of childhood. A breeze brings back the memory of an old friend. A distant bird calls from somewhere beyond the trees. Thought gently becomes memory. Memory quietly becomes imagination. Imagination softly returns to the present. Nothing is forced. Nothing is hurried. The garden simply invites quiet wandering. Your brain often behaves in a remarkably similar way. Even while resting, it continues weaving together experiences, memories, hopes, questions, and gentle reflections. These quiet conversations are not interruptions. They are part of what makes you wonderfully human. Perhaps that is why some of our most meaningful ideas arrive while taking a peaceful walk, sitting beside the ocean, watching rain gather upon a window, or lying comfortably in bed before sleep. The nervous system never truly stops listening to itself. And yet, for all that science has learned, the nervous system continues to surprise us. Every year, new discoveries quietly appear. New questions gently emerge. New pathways are uncovered. Researchers continue listening with remarkable patience, knowing that every answer often reveals another beautiful mystery waiting just beyond it. There is something comforting about that. We do not need to know everything in order to appreciate something. You have never needed to understand every star in the sky before enjoying a peaceful night beneath them. You have never needed to know the name of every tree before enjoying the quiet of a forest. In much the same way, you do not need to understand every neuron before appreciating the remarkable conversations quietly unfolding inside your own body. At this very moment, billions of them continue without asking anything of you. They gently guide your breathing. They quietly steady your heartbeat. They help your eyes grow heavier. They soften the busy edges of today's thoughts. They continue caring for memories you may not revisit for years. They patiently prepare tomorrow while allowing tonight to become still. From the very first moment of life until this quiet evening, they have remained faithful companions. Not perfect, not unchanging, but endlessly adaptable, wonderfully patient, remarkably alive. Perhaps, after everything we have explored together, the nervous system no longer feels like a collection of complicated scientific words. Perhaps it feels a little more like an ancient forest, or a peaceful city, or a quiet library, or a gentle river carrying countless conversations toward the sea. Every metaphor we have used has quietly pointed toward the same truth. Life is not built from isolated moments. It is woven from relationships. Tiny conversations becoming larger conversations. Simple patterns becoming rich experiences. Individual whispers becoming the quiet voice you call yourself. And now, as this journey slowly comes to rest, those conversations continue exactly as they always have. They do not know that the story is ending. They simply carry on with remarkable devotion. One neuron listening, another responding. One memory quietly settling beside another. One peaceful breath following the last. While you drift a little closer toward sleep, the quiet network within you asks for nothing. It expects nothing. It simply continues its endless conversation, patiently keeping watch until morning arrives, just as it always has, and just as it always will.